Hey everyone, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy the audiobooks, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support us further, consider becoming a Patreon member. As a member, you'll gain the ability to request the next part of a novel audiobook I've uploaded, depending on your Patreon tier.
The world retained its calmness. I didn't know how much time had passed, but I came to with my body feeling somewhat lighter than it was before. I wondered what had changed as I looked around me and saw hunters looking around in a confused manner while my summon continued its rampage. I observed the blue-boxed panel in the corner of my eye to see if there were any changes there. Nearly everything seemed the same, with exactly one simple change that was shining blue at the bottom of the panel. Skill combination combines skills of the same rank to bring out unknown power. Compatibility is the key. Limited to skills at 100 proficiency. I blanked out for a second after reading the description of this newly appearing function. I then looked at the multitude of skills in my panel that had all reached 100 as I began to feel excited. I thought I had grown powerful enough, but with this, I can go even further. I had been rushing about the entire time this past week and currently felt mentally exhausted, and I was planning to relax the next few days. I didn't get another message or voice after defeating the dragon, making me assume that the system edition of skill combination, which the mysterious voice was talking about, had taken a toll on it, and it would take some time before it approached me again. I was planning on slowly learning about this new function, which skills were compatible to combine, and what they become after the combination. Ideas were already mixing in my head that I couldn't wait to try. I left my virulent abomination to continue clearing the thousands of beasts that had yet to run away as I moved from my position in the air to heal the many injured hunters around the battlefield. I could feel the eyes of the hunter I saved watching me very closely as I moved, but I ignored it for now. I was curious about him too, as he was deemed important enough by the mysterious voice to be saved, and I was even more sure of it being him after recalling one of the figures I saw in the 3 smaller rooms. That smirk on his face very closely resembled what I saw. Clearing the battlefield took a significant amount of time as 2 hours quickly passed. Hunters that were standing on opposing sides helped one another as squads were made to go clear the remaining countries that the dragon had occupied. With its death, the powerful rank A hunters could easily work together to take down the lower-ranked beasts and save their people. The hunter that was watching me closely approached me as I was healing an injured soldier on the ground. "Noah Osmont, right? Thank you for saving my life." I turned to look at the man with dark hair that had a confident smile on his face. "Not a problem, it was something I felt obligated to do." "You are?" I was replying as I healed the hunters around us. After a certain point, they just brought more and more injured people where I was, which I found to be easier than running around looking for them myself. Kazuhiko, or most commonly known as the Dark Sword. The person and the face clicked as I remembered the famous hunter that stood atop everyone else in the United Federation. The most powerful hunter in the United Federation, huh? Thanks for holding down the beast until I made it in time. He scoffed as he heard this. "Ha, what most powerful hunter? If I took that title, then what are you supposed to be?" I smiled when he mentioned this, and Kazuhiko continued. "I admire your strength. I only heard very few things about you, but didn't think you were so overpowered to such an extent. Is it your inherent skill, or is there another secret to your strength?" He really couldn't hide his aims as he asked this so blatantly, and I replied by telling him it was my inherent skill. His shoulders slumped for a moment before quickly coming up again as he talked to himself. "That's okay, it just means there is someone stronger than me that I can look forward to surpassing." The katana by his side seemed to vibrate as he said this, and I just listened while I finished healing the last hunter. After this, Kazuhiko pulled me aside while boisterously saying that after a hard-fought battle, we had to go enjoy ourselves. I was feeling exhausted and hungry after all this time and chose to go along. The virulent abomination had finished chasing down all nearby beasts and ripping them apart, so I unsummoned it far in the distance and watched it explode while releasing noxious gas for the last time. I wondered if I would find any compatible S-rank skills in the future to combine and make this beast even stronger. High-ranking hunters and officials took the lead to clear everything around the battlefield as Kazuhiko took me further inland. We bypassed the walled defenses and arrived to a large military compound not too far off from where the fighting was occurring. Kazuhiko walked in as if he owned the place and said a few things to the soldiers there, and we were soon seated in a dining area with drinks and foods being brought in every minute. An entire half a day of flying on the back of my poisonous summon and the constant fights these past weeks had exhausted me more than I thought as I enjoyed the ever so increasing feast in front of me. Foods that I've never tried before made their way into my mouth. There was a platter of something called yakitori that I couldn't get enough of. Another one that I truly enjoyed was something that Kazuhiko called sukiyaki. It was an enormous pot that had the softest stew of beef and vegetables. I enjoyed the food and company to say the least, listening to the boisterous hunter talk about his journey to the peak of rank. My main focus was the food as I half-heartedly listened to the stories. Kazuhiko seemed like a good guy. From the way he talked, he looked like that friend that always seemed to have a screw loose but was holding it in and staying sane. He always took the initiative to talk and ask me questions, making it his goal to try and understand everything about me. Talking to him gave me a reminder of just how drastically my life had changed from just a few weeks ago. When a plate of food called takoyaki came, my entire attention was stolen away as I found myself devouring the round balls filled with octopus and I don't know what else in a blink and calling out to the soldier delivering the plates to bring out even more of them. The day passed like this as I enjoyed food I hadn't had before. After the many meals came and empty plates left, the food that unceasingly went into my stomach came to a stop. I was lying on my back staring at the ceiling as I thought about this peace I could really only achieve after having an amazing meal. Worries of the future faded away. The constant anger cooled down, and it felt like a much-needed rest period had come. It didn't last long as Kazuhiko shattered this peace in an instant by loudly flinging the door open. He had left a couple of minutes back to I don't even know where, and now he came back as noisy as ever. "We've had the food, now we ought to have some fun." The hunter loudly barged in while bringing more than 10 barely dressed women inside the room. I groaned at this sight as I really just wanted to sleep after eating so much today. How did he even get these women in this war zone so quickly anyways? I rose up and watched the figures pouring into the room. Well, as much as I wanted to rest, I would be a good guest and follow the lead of the host. Night passed and dawn came. I had woken up and walked out to a small courtyard that had a brightly shining pond with a few fish. I sat down in the courtyard as I enjoyed this environment of calmness. Early that morning, I was able to get in contact with the people back in the Blessed Empire. Elizabeth was the point of contact, and for some odd reason I felt guilty when I read the huge text update she had sent. Much of the beasts had been taken care of back in the Empire, with many of the people quickly adapting to the new function they saw on their attribute panels. Kazuhiko had spent an entire hour on this yesterday questioning me if I had anything to do with this, as the change had occurred the moment the dragon fell. I denied everything for the time being and waited to hear again from the mysterious being that was taking its time. The main takeaway for the new skill combination function was that it was extremely useful for veteran hunters. Your proficiency had to first reach 100 for any of the skills you wanted to combine, and they had to have compatibility. Very few hunters were able to even match the first requirement, not to mention finding two skills compatible with each other. So even after half a day passed since this new function was founded, they still didn't have much information on it. I thought about the many skills I had that had already reached 100 proficiency as I wanted to start trying for myself, with the lower-ranked skills as the first test. I finished reading the huge bubble of a text, with the major thing I had to take note of being the request of my presence back in the Empire to be awarded an influential position and many more things. I didn't become overly excited at this, as I had undergone way too many things these past few weeks that made me have a different outlook on the world. Life was extremely fleeting. I had watched many people die and saved countless more, but I still felt that something was missing. Even the anger I felt towards enemies I have yet to ascertain or the revenge the mysterious being had promised didn't fill whatever was missing. Since there was nothing pressing occurring in the Empire, with the dungeons being taken care of by the high-ranking hunters and things on the path to being stabilized, I would stay and tour the places in the United Federation for a bit. I was waiting for the next time I would be back in that blank room with the hexagonal prism, where I would no doubt be getting many answers. Before jumping into the new function, I pulled out the golden skill book that the dragon had dropped. It was Rage of the Thunder Monarch Area of Effect skill. Extremely condensed lightning decimates an area of 15 meters. The skill seemed to be even more destructive power than volcanic eruption because of its lower effect area, but I would still have to test it to be sure. The book turned into particles of light as it flew to my body and the skill appeared in my panel. I looked through the panel to start assessing possible skills to combine. To start testing the skill combination function, I wanted to begin with the rank F skills, but I realized that I only learned 2 after all this time. I had grown so rapidly that I jumped from F to mostly rank D and C skills. This wouldn't be an issue though, as I had been running around taking down many rank of bosses this past week and collected many skill books in my storage rings. Even after I gave away a vast majority to the destroyed cities I visited and to the military regiments I came across, I still had many to play with. I let out the collections of skill books in my storage rings and learnt many skills of lower ranks for the purpose of testing. I had to learn them now and spend some time using them and having them active for their proficiency to rise to 100 before I could begin combining. Then for now, the focus would be placed on the rank D and C skills. I already had many of that were at 100 proficiency. None of the rank A skills had reached 100 so far, so I'll leave those for now. To start it off, I opened the skill combination function and added 2 obviously non-compatible rank D skills. Rough Skin plus Flames of Torment. When the 2 skills were placed on the 2 slots, there was a red color shining out. The combination was not successful. So red showed bad compatibility that would not work. Next up I tried what I thought to be compatible skills, which was Safeguard plus Rough Skin. The 2 slots shined a light green, and the green light expanded as the 2 skills disappeared, a brand new one appearing on my panel. Armored Skin. The skill had a brand new color, in contrast to the skills written in white with the blue background of the panel. It had a purple color, with its rank now upgraded to D+, and its proficiency showing. I activated this new skill in wonder and found that the defense provided by it was more than triple what Safeguard and Rough Skin provided. It was still a lower ranking skill though, so it didn't drastically change my defenses. Since combining the 2 of them changed its rank from D to D+, I wondered if combining 2 D+ skills would give rise to a brand new rank C skill. I didn't have all that many rank D skills that had already risen to 100 though, so I would have to wait for the new ones I just learnt to reach there. I was about to continue my testing by moving on to rank C skills when an annoying voice broke the peace established in courtyard. Noah, let's grab some breakfast and then go dungeon diving. The guy had become overly friendly over this past day, had come out early morning with energy that I could in no way match. It seemed that his excitement stemmed from the fact that he was able to combine 2 of his rank A skills and produce a powerful rank A+ skill. Veteran hunters like him who had been dungeon diving for the past months had collected a multitude of skills that fit their class, so they had many options of compatible skills that had reached the required proficiency for combination. Well, when I start combining my own, I should have even more to work with. And I was currently the only hunter holding the most powerful rank S skills. Kazuhiko had been able to combine 2 of his skills called Blade Dance and Dominator's Sword Wave to bring the result of Dominator's Dance of Death. I was curious about this rank A+ skill and wanted to test my newly gained skills too, so a dungeon would be perfect right now. Food came first as I was treated to brand new dishes once again today, with us heading out an hour later. The country we were in was called King's Harbor. After moving away from the military sector and heading inwards, I was able to see groups of people and hunters celebrating their newly found freedom from the threat of beasts that were heading here. Previously, Kazuhiko was walking beside me while talking about the power structure of countries in the United Federation and their dungeon diving system here. I recalled a news show I had watched back in Outer Bank X weeks ago that mentioned a similar topic about how hunters were restricted in the United Federation and had to turn half of their loot over to the government. It turns out that this system was placed to raise many peak hunters who were obligated to work for the government and defend the lower-ranking hunters that contributed their loot. This was why hunters in the United Federation had much less mortality rates, as a stronger hunter who used up more of the resources was assigned to each of the teams diving in the dungeon. This built up a system where many strong hunters dived into dungeons with weaker ones. Kazuhiko routinely had to dive into rank B dungeons with rank B hunters while occasionally clearing rank A dungeons with a government-created fully rank A team. It was a good system that I applauded, as it produced many strong hunters and a level of responsibility that caused there to be less deaths in the United Federation when Apocalypse 2.0 occurred a week ago. There were many strong hunters spread out all over the countries, unlike the cramming of powerful hunters into a few specific cities back in the Empire. Right now, we were heading to a rank A dungeon called Babadook's Lair, which was a dungeon filled with strange dark-furred monsters that had powerful offensive skills. Kazuhiko was very confident in my strength after he watched me take down the Black Dragon, so we dived into the dungeon by ourselves. The first floor was an expansive dark space that contained many of those dark-furred monsters, and Kazuhiko moved first, trying his Dominator's Dance of Death for the first time. His figure flickered in and out on the surroundings, his sword releasing a multitude of dark sword waves that smashed into the dark-furred figures and tore through their defenses. There were more than 30 rank A monsters in front of us, but they all received the powerful attacks from this one rank A+ skill and tumbled down like dominoes. Kazuhiko was smiling like a child as he sheathed his sword and watched the destruction he had caused. On the next floor after that, I tried out the rank S skill, Rage of the Thunder Monarch, on the next group of the dark-furred beasts. Boom! On top of their heads, a wide expanse of purple lightning roiled out and then struck down. They seemed like thick pillars of snakes that caused destruction everywhere they touched. The rank A beasts didn't stand a chance as their bodies were literally blown apart. Kazuhiko didn't want to be outdone and went to the lower floor with even more vigor. I used Summon Virulent Abomination as we moved further in, summoning the grotesque but lovable beast that tore through the rank A enemies as if they were nothing. I realized that rank A dungeons would not pose a single threat to me as I watched the beast tear through the defenses of monsters. I let the summon and Kazuhiko do all the work going forwards as I focused on possible skill combinations with the skills that currently met the requirements and were compatible. I was able to combine the rank C skills, Whirlwind, and Aura of Haste, to produce C+ Fevered Rush. When activated, my speed sharply rose for an instant as I traveled forward and almost smacked into a wall. The speed still couldn't beat rank F flight. Further experimentation allowed me to combine the rank B skills, Shadow Veil, and Stealth, to bring out B+ Dark Assassin. This new skill most definitely matched rank A skills, if not surpassing some of them, as my body disappeared and melded into the surroundings as I wished. I could keep it active at all times to still cover up the colorful skill effects of the many other active skills I had on all the time, while choosing when to become fully hidden that even the powerful rank A peak hunter Kazuhiko had trouble finding me. My experimentations came to an end as we reached the boss room, and I watched the hunter and summon shred apart the rank A titan as if it was nothing, leaving it as a poisoned mess of bones and flesh. After the hunter was looking indignantly at the summoned creature, he didn't seem to be able to fully match yet, and I laughed at this sight. Since we finished this rank A dungeon so quickly, in less than half an hour at that, we dived back in right after. I had the goal of obtaining more rank A skills to play around with, skill combination, even more. The process would take time though, as I had to learn the skills and bring them all the way to 100 proficiency before I could combine them. We dived into the rank A dungeon more than 10 times after that, only coming out sometime in the afternoon. I was able to pocket 5 rank A skills for myself, leaving all the cores, 3 items, and 2 skill books that matched Kazuhiko behind. I had already reached the peak that rank A cores could bring me long ago, and was now absorbing the rank S cores from the 3 powerful beasts I defeated. I also recalled some time back before I took down the rank S turtle and humanoid mosquito, I had gained a rank A skill book called Void Slash that I just tossed in my storage ring and forgot about. I looked at Kazuhiko and his katana, pulling out the skill right after and handing it to him. He looked at the skill description and turned all serious, giving me a heartfelt thanks for the gift. I shook off the gratitude and turned my attention to the horrendous-looking virulent abomination to the side, as it had made the dungeon runs as effortless as they could be, and I could almost feel myself sinking into laziness as I watched the beast do all the work. We were heading in further into King's Harbor at the behest of Kazuhiko, It seemed the allied countries of the United Federation were planning an event to honor the great hunter that brought down the dragon. I wasn't into festivities though, and planned to not attend when something occurred that gave me the perfect reason not to. The mysterious voice had returned yet again. Kazuhiko saw my serious expression and stopped, and I told him that something came up, disappearing from his sight with dark assassin, and flying into the skies. I floated high in the air as I felt my vision sinking, and I found myself in that same blank room once more. 3 figures were still visible in smaller rooms surrounding this one, with the hexagonal prism slowly rotating in this main room. The voice rang out once more as I closely listened. It was time for answers. The explanations began slowly, and soon became huge dumps of information that I had to sift through. To start it off, the being I have been talking to this entire time called itself the planetary core. When I first heard this, I blanked out a little. I had been talking to the core of this world this entire time. It went further to further clarify that it was a system of laws congregated together to keep this world alive, so I could also call it this world's planetary system. I cut it down to system for short just to make it easier when I was addressing it. The system had gained consciousness when dungeons first began appearing on this planet, and could only begin to act a step behind the enemies and play catch-up as they began their invasion. Essence of our young world was used to awaken the first groups of hunters, paying an expensive price to grant them inherent skills that enabled them to stand against the onslaught of beasts. This wouldn't be enough to stand against the droves of enemies though, so the system performed its first drastic measure since it gained consciousness. When the beasts died, their essence was lost in the environment and could be reabsorbed by the surrounding world inefficiently. The system took the drastic action of using more than half of its essence to form a system of power that was compatible to the beings in its planet that knew nothing about the new fantastical and magical things they were experiencing. The awakened would now be able to quantify and observe their strength with the advent of an attribute panel, and most of all, the key factor of being able to get stronger by snatching the essence from the beasts they kill. The system used more than half of its essence to implement this new system of power where the essence of dying beasts would be extracted, and the skills and abilities that were buried deep in the beast's essence would be turned to the source of strength for the hunters. Thus came the advent of skill books, items, and cores. Some beasts that later came to be called titans and bosses had a denser collection of essence that allowed for skills and items to be extracted from them, while for other beasts, only cores that reinforced the strength, vitality, and focus of the awakened individuals could be drawn out. This new system of power allowed this world and its inhabitants a unique ability that most likely was not existent anywhere else in the universe that allowed for the extraction and absorbance of the power of your enemies. The system had to regain the tremendous amount of essence it lost through this, so half of all extracted energy would go towards the planet's core. The awakened were thus able to make their stand and slowly take back their lands, but much of the world was already decimated by beasts, only giving rise to a collection of countries that later became known as the United Federation and a connection of cities protected under the banner of an empire. The system went into a period of hibernation after this to recover its essence, its hunters slowly contributing by clearing the beasts and the dungeons that they came from. This brought us to the subject of dungeons. The dungeons were lines of connections that our enemy sent down. These lines of connections carried with them the origin of many inhabitants from another world. They were sent down and settled on the planet as monoliths that required time to allow for the physical entry of the beings in the connection line. Depending on how much essence was used on the dungeons, the rate of release could be accelerated. But if people came in contact with the monolith and were able to defeat the origins of the beings in it, essence of the monolith would be used up and the release would be delayed. The enemy that sent these dungeons down would then have to keep providing essence towards these dungeons to replenish the origin of the beings in it. This process repeated back and forth in the months that followed the advent of the apocalypse. Hunters would repeatedly enter dungeons and clear them, using up more and more essence and taking it for themselves. The other side would continue to send down essence to reinforce and maintain the origins of beings that slowly lost their minds and rationality from being broken and rebuilt so many times. Then came the reason that I was wondering about all this time. If a dungeon was cleared rapidly enough, the inflow of essence from the invading force couldn't keep up with how much essence was being absorbed, and the connection line would be broken, with the beings inside dying completely. This was the destruction of the monolith that I had caused. I looked up to the rotating prism when it got to this point and asked, "Then the plain crystal that I received once the monolith imploded is?" It is a direct line of connection that we can use to ascertain the coordinates of their world and send our own forces down. I was speechless for the first time in a while. I thought about what this implied and then asked something I couldn't bring myself to ask before. How do I fit in all of this? The system took a pause when we go to this point. When I regained enough essence to become active again, I saw that the situation was not heading in the right direction and that I had to act once more. I felt a level of frustration as I had enough essence and power to even bend some natural laws, but I couldn't make use of it to plainly erase the invaders because much stronger universal laws are in place to prevent such direct intervention. I felt my mind start pounding as I listened very closely to the next words. So I calculated countless possibilities and came to the one with the highest chance of success, while it also posed the greatest danger. But this path would allow for a truly strong person to rise and protect the planet, so I attempted it. I listened with rapt attention while waiting for the voice to continue. I created a backdoor from the planet's core and connected it to a single human that had the least restrictions, someone who wasn't yet even awakened. This channel would allow the possibility of things that are normally impossible. My thoughts were moving rapidly as I heard this. This was why I felt that I had infinite mana to cast whatever skills I wanted without restriction. This was why my focus was blank. All of that energy, it wasn't just coming from nowhere. This made me recall something I had read about in school years back, that energy couldn't be created nor destroyed, only transformed from one form to another. It felt like lessons finally kicked in when I thought about my mana, and how the skill books and cores came to be. But could the common laws I knew about even be applicable at this stage we were at now? As for just how much energy an entire planet contained, could the tremendous essence even be quantified? My thoughts were interrupted as the system continued. But this came at a huge cost and introduced a vulnerability that was not there before. You are connected to the planetary core, and the planetary core is connected to you. If you ever face destruction, the entire planet will follow. At a certain point in many people's lives, they come to a moment where they ask themselves, "Why me? Why did this tragedy happen to me? Why does everything always go wrong for me? Why do some people make millions a day while I barely make 50? Why me?" I wasn't even sure if there was a clear answer to this, but I still found myself asking the same question to the rotating hexagonal prism. After getting over the bombshell that my little life actually held much more importance than I initially imagined, I found this question swimming at the forefront of my mind. Why me? This was one of the biggest things I wanted to know. There were many other things like how did the system know if I would awaken as a hunter if the channel was set up long before? How could it be sure I wouldn't be just another human casualty and cause everything to collapse? There were many questions I wanted to ask first, but the first and foremost that came out of my mouth was, why me? A silence followed after as only the rapid rotations of the hexagonal prism could be felt. You were chosen randomly. It just so happened that among the many humans who had yet to awaken, you were chosen by chance. The reply came unexpectedly, and it might have not been the thing I wanted to hear, but I actually felt relief from it. I wasn't some chosen one who was born to do great things. I just received a monumental gift. A gift that I would use to the best of my abilities from now on. Don't tell me that you also didn't know whether I would awaken or not, or even live another day in the case something like a dungeon break occurred and wiped out an entire city? There was no certainty of that either. I mentioned that I undertook this plan because it provided the highest % chance of survival for us all, but that percentage was still very low. I could only make a shot in the dark, because if I hadn't, we would have faced complete destruction in the future. Something like this is normally impossible, with a near 0% chance of working out. It is a completely unique situation. There was a pause as it let these words sink in before it continued. All that remains is that it worked, and because it worked, we now stand a chance to go against the enemies plotting against us. The next phase of our actions is for you to head to the world our enemies reside in and disrupt the structure there. If you are able to completely place the inhabitants of that world under your rule, It opens up even more wondrous possibilities that you cannot begin to imagine. I listened as the system continued to dump a whole lot more information onto me. From the many beasts that died and had their essence absorbed by the planet, memories of the world they came from and their aims were slowly collected and pieced together. Especially the rankest beasts, their essence held much more crucial information. The first thing to keep in mind was that this invasion of beasts was simply a use of pawns to achieve their aim of domination for young planets. The near-infinite reserves of energy that the planet held is what they were after. Just like how countries made up wars to obtain oil, war was now being waged for the countless supplies of energy on a much grander scale. If they achieved their aims and dominated the inhabitants of the world, they would be able to use them as disposable pawns to invade other worlds first and the mining of the planet's essence using specialized dungeons. Entire worlds that had their people dominated could only watch as their world was turned into a mine for the years to come as it cycled through absorbing essence from the outside world and having it stolen right after. At this stage, the world no longer grew. Inhabitants in such a world could not dream of obtaining more power and getting stronger. An example is the race of beasts that became stronger with years of mulating and growing their essence and learning how to cast complex skills and abilities. If the essence of their world was to be taken over by others and exploited for their own uses, their powers would become stagnant. That is where you come in. You are a weapon and a very powerful one at that. If you descend onto their world and become its ruler, besides stopping any future forces from being sent here, we will have the option of annexing an entire world for our own uses. The words of the system continued to be bombshells every time, but I could feel excitement from them. We first get back at the true culprits who caused so much pain for us, and then obtain an entire. From the collection of memories of those beasts, the world they reside in is a large world under the control of mythical races of beasts. It is a flourishing world that suddenly faced an invasion, and even with the tremendous strength of its inhabitants, parts of it have already fallen under the rule of invading enemies. It is those beings that are now continuing their conquest in that world while using its subjugated inhabitants as pawns to also invade smaller worlds. More and more information kept on coming. I committed everything to memory the moment the other world began being mentioned. Our goal is the same thing: to disrupt their plans and take that world for ourselves. We will not be so weak as to be bullied after that. If we have to, we won't even stop just at that world, and extend our reach to the far corners of the universe. Only with sufficient power can we be confident. With you in the lead, the goal has a large chance of success. For you are someone who is able to tap into a power that is normally constrained by universal laws. It felt as if I was getting the biggest pep talk of my life as I listened to the dominating words coming out of the system. You are someone able to access the unquantifiable reserves of an entire planet. Something sacred that is used to set the order of life. You have it under your fingertips. You can call it endless. You can call it infinite. Never in your lifetime will you feel like you do not have enough energy no matter how high you continue climbing. When you soused in your conquest and bring the apocalypse that you faced unto other worlds, obtaining their sources of power too, you can factually state that you have infinite mana in this era of apocalypse. Silence. Utter and complete silence. I could feel the beating of my heart and the blood rushing through my body as I finished listening and said, "When do we start?" A horned being was reading complex data in an unknown location with a furious expression. Something unexplainable had occurred on the same planet that had shown abnormalities some time back. The signals placed on the pathetic beasts that held a level of power had all but disappeared. This gesticulated a message of failure. They wouldn't be able to start any operations on this planet for the time being. Having diverted many pieces into this one planet so frequently caused them to be restricted towards it. They could not forcefully send more pieces for at least a few months as these restrictions loosened. The being's anger quickly reduced as he changed his mindset. His role was only to pioneer and establish connections to other worlds in preparation for takeovers in the future. Many of his peers still had their focus on finishing the conquest of the major world they were in now. The only pockets of resistance remaining were the kingdoms where lineages of mythical beasts were ruling, as well as the frozen kingdom where the last of the human race on this planet was thriving. A devilish smile appeared on the horned being's face as he thought about his contribution that led to the downfall of the most powerful kingdom in this world and allowed for them to take root fully. The remaining places would all fall in due time, no matter how long it took. He could already see it happening in front of his eyes. For he is the personification of lies and evil, the Prince of Darkness. Ranked 68, he was commonly known as Demon King Belial. Places all over the world were becoming stabilized as hunters performed their roles and quelled the onslaught of beasts. Cities in the Blessed Empire and the various countries of the United Federation were discussing the regulation of dungeons across the world. New knowledge was coming out every day that ascertained how frequently dungeons had to be cleared in a day in order to completely destroy them. The number of times differed depending on the ranks, with lower-level dungeons requiring to be cleared many more times until their monoliths were destroyed. The conclusion wasn't fully ascertained by the hunters, but the actual cause was that lower-ranked dungeons required less supply of essence to be kept active, and thus could more easily be replenished as they were cleared. High-ranking dungeons required significantly more essence in order to replenish the origins of the beasts inside it, thus required a less number of times to be cleared before the outflowing of essence surpassed the inflow and caused the destruction of the dungeon. The discussion taking place was which number of dungeons should safely be left for hunters to regularly clear and become stronger, while putting the effort in celeste tours where many dungeons appeared and it would be better to destroy them before a dungeon break occurred. The discussion and regulation of this was ongoing, with the different countries and cities deciding for themselves what was best. I had spent a significant amount of time talking to the system in that blank room and learned many more things. I was currently flying back to the Star City of the Blessed Empire to receive awards and recognition. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that important to me right now as my mind was fully filled with dangerous information and I was only thinking about the expansive world I would be descending in soon enough. I left King's Harbor after sharing a few words with Kazuhiko and apologizing for not being able to stay any longer. The system had mentioned that we wouldn't be getting any mass descents of dungeons like what just occurred anytime soon, as it could feel tight restrictions against beings descending down that were covering the planet after the most recent attack. But we didn't know exactly how long this would be. Maybe a few months, or half a year, or the same time span that passed from the first invasion we faced to this second one. We were not completely sure. So I was moving with the goal of wrapping everything up before heading to a location specified by the system to start my next journey. The mystery of Kazuhiko and the other figure I saw in the smaller rooms attached to the blank room was not too explosive. The other figure that shone with a golden light was most likely the strongest hunter of the Empire, Steel Mikhail. Both him and Kazuhiko had received more attention and essence from the system when they first awakened, granting them powerful inherent skills that allowed them to lead the hunters forward and save many more lives when the apocalypse first began. With the advent of skill combination, their lead from other hunters will continue to get wider as they start combining many of their skills to produce higher-ranked ones. The reality of them combining several rank A skills to become A+, and then spend a few weeks to raise those skills up to the required proficiency in order to produce a rank S skill wasn't too far off. I wasn't sure whether hunters holding multiple rank A+ skill could fully match someone with 1 or 2 rank S skills, but time would tell as things progress. This was something I confirmed with the system. The combination of 2+ skills would almost always give you a powerful skill of the next rank. These two powerful hunters would continue growing their strength here and prepare for any descents that occur in the future. Their power, as well as many of the veteran hunters all over the world, would surely rise to rank S in the months to come and give them the ability to withstand many of the things coming. They would be leading reformations for both powers to make sure lives are not needlessly lost if anything like the mass dungeon descents occur again in the future. As for the white-haired figure on the remaining room, the system mentioned that I would meet her soon enough. I flew through the skies using flight and observed the many dots of people congregating in the countries I passed. None of them had any idea of the larger forces in play, or where they would be a few months from now. They all felt the momentary peace and calmness that was settling right now while mourning for the many that lost their lives. After I passed a few countries and continued my reflections, I casted Summon Virulent Abomination, and got on top of the terrifying beast that was much faster than me. A green streak passed across the clear skies, crossing the border between the two nations. I made it back to the Empire after another 6 hours of flying at high speeds atop the virulent abomination. On the way here, I had learned the 5 rank A skill books I gained from Babadook's lair. The 5 of them were Earth Armor, Recorder, Permafrost, Combusting Spears, and Language Comprehension. Out of all of these, the one I found most interesting was Recorder, which allowed me to replay anything I saw with my eyes while activated. I could of course keep it active at all times, which meant I could rewatch everything like a film if I chose to do so. I was still finding ways that I could use this skill effectively. I also combined more skills that had high compatibility, putting together the rank B skills, Cold Fire, and Greater Cold Penetration, to bring out B+ Boreal Penetration. The Fire Element rank B skills, Greater Flame Penetration, and Burning Soul, also combined to bring out B+ Blazing Penetration. A few of my rank A skills were nearing 100 proficiency, so I couldn't try fusing any of them yet. I already had a few ideas in mind for when they met the requirements. My thoughts came to a stop as I flew towards Star City's military sector, where I was met with rows of soldiers and hunters giving me praise. Communications had long since spread from the United Federation, with the allied countries there praising the Empire for the aid and sending forth their top hunter to help. Relations between the two forces were turning for the better after they realized just how deadly their common enemy can be, as well as the strength I showed. There would be more cooperation between the two nations moving forward, and less of the political attacks and spread of propaganda that many of us had been accustomed to. Peace in the world was in no way achieved, but steps were being taken to try and build it. Humans always found new ways to be selfish and stupid, so who knows where we'll be a few months from now. I tried to disperse the regiment of hunters who definitely had better things to be doing as I was led into an old office that gave me nostalgia. It wasn't the rugged man with an impassive expression in it, but a woman with a military uniform going through stacks of papers. The person in front of me was naturally Elizabeth, who was trying to honor the memory of her friend and manage the logistics of Star City while still acting as an active hunter. Much of her time was now stretched between office work and dungeon diving, giving no time for anything else. She wore large round glasses that she pushed up when I walked in, and a huge smile bloomed from her face. The next few minutes were spent talking about the events in the United Federation and all intricacies that went with it. She also let me know how my presence was requested at the Empire's capital so that I could be properly rewarded. When we got to this point, I thought about the stage I currently stood at and realized there wasn't really anything that I wanted or needed that the hunters here could provide. My only goal currently was to let them know that I would be disappearing, with only a few selected higher-ups knowing that I was heading into the enemy's den. I had already told this to Kazuhiko before leaving, and I left the decision of who he would tell in the United Federation in his hands. My secrets were too grand to share with everyone else, so I used the same excuse I told Kazuhiko to Elizabeth. I had found a way to use the plain crystal that comes out from destroyed dungeons to go where they came from, that I had grown powerful enough to try and disrupt the enemy's plans on their own turf. When I first told Kazuhiko this, he had stared at me silently for more than 5 minutes before he nodded with an unreadable expression. The hunters of this world were no doubt about to become explosively more powerful, but they weren't at the level of withstanding the enemies I would be facing. The system wanted to conduct a covert takeover, where I would rise to power in that world as a native, and not as an invader. A similar difficult-to-read expression appeared on Elizabeth's face after I finished talking, and she looked at me hesitantly, as if she wanted to bring herself to say something but couldn't. I looked at this woman that I hadn't spent too much time with to really get to know her and thought about things that could have been if events were playing out differently. Maybe there was a possibility of something to grow and be nurtured under different circumstances, but not now. I quickly changed the subject before that hesitation of hers turned into something else, and we wistfully moved on to other matters. Over the next few days, many things occurred as I traveled around the Empire and lent a hand where it was needed. If dungeons needed to be destroyed, I would be there to do it much quicker than the groups of hunters that were required to do it. Something of interest to note was me finally getting a rank A skill that was a bit stronger in its usefulness when compared to Dark Assassin. It was a rank A skill called Obscure, that covered my body with a dark smoke which quickly turned me transparent. I actively looked for more covert skills of rank A and even B so that I would be able to produce compatible skills to quickly bring out a powerful rank S hiding skill. When the time was ripe, I visited the capital of the empire where I was received by a hunter that I had only seen on TV a couple of times. Steel Mikhail was standing like a sharp spear in the large hall I was brought into. "You are really going to jump into the enemy's den?" These were the first words I heard from the man that seemed to give off a strong sense of strength and righteousness. He was among the few higher-ups that would know that I would be disappearing soon. He was one of the defenders of the world that the system chose. With his vast amount of time active as a rank A hunter, I wouldn't be surprised if he already held multiple rank A skills that had reached 100 proficiency and had high compatibility that were already fused, boosting his power by a large amount. When I nodded to his question, he spent a few seconds looking at me before he spoke again. "We will be placing our hopes on you for the future then. I want to thank you in advance." The future? I thought about the things to come as I spent some time talking with Mikhail. The guy was very straightforward, asking me what information I had on the enemies we were facing. The extent of my strength was known, with my power suppressing beasts that hunters at this stage had trouble dealing with, so he didn't question my confidence when I discussed my goal of disrupting the enemy's power in the world they were in. I gave out the basic information without delving too deep to even get near my secrets, spending a significant time talking to him before he was content. I didn't want to frolic around with too many people in the Empire as there were much bigger things I had to think about, so I disregarded most of the other requests of officials who wanted to meet me and prepared to move out to the locations specified by the system. The time was quickly approaching. In that serene village of less than 100 people, the white-haired girl with glistening blue eyes was doing her daily routine. Currently, she was combining a white flour mix and milk in preparation of a cake for one of the kids' birthdays. She was humming a tune as she moved back and forth, her hair sparkling in the bright sunlight that passed through the windows. She was absorbed in her work as she abruptly looked up and felt something, standing up and cleaning herself up before she moved out of the small house. She smiled at the kids that were already running about early in the morning and the old ladies that were rocking on their chairs. She made her way from the collection of houses in the small village and neared the blue transparent barrier that was surrounding it. With a movement of her hand, the blue barrier opened up a wide area, and a dark-haired man with a calm expression could be seen standing outside. I finished all my preparations and goodbyes in the Empire, and I soon arrived at the specified coordinates given by the system. It wasn't like I was leaving this place forever, so I didn't feel a huge sense of loss as I knew I would be coming back. As for why I came to this specific location, it was because this was one of the most important places on this planet with a congregation of essence where a transfer to another world could be done most efficiently. I twirled the plain crystal I had in hand as I flew down towards an empty clearing that only seemed to hold trees. There was a specific way these crystals could be used, so no matter how hunters played around with them, they wouldn't find any results. From the words of the system, specific regulation of essence was required to send anything across worlds, and the people on this planet were nowhere close to having that level of control to allow them to do this without the help of something else. Beings that were born in larger worlds that had more experience with mana had much better ways to utilize it, with them requiring only a large amount of essence to be expanded before they sent down hundreds of thousands of beasts across worlds. I reached the ground of the forest clearing and waited a few seconds before a wondrous sight opened itself in front of me. A few feet away, I saw the appearance and dissolution of a transparent dome as a small pathway opened up, showing the figure of one of the most beautiful things I had ever seen. Glowing white hair and striking blue eyes, the figure sweetly smiled at me and said, "Come in." I shook myself and walked through the pathways as the dome began to close, following behind the figure that was skipping towards the center of what seemed like a village. Small houses that you would see in olden times were widespread, with plots of land growing a multitude of crops and a few barns present here and there. My entrance was garnering attention from the people in this village, but the moment they saw the girl walking with me, their apprehensions seemed to have faded and they went back to their work. I followed the figure of the girl while looking curiously around this new place that seemed like a mini paradise that would forever remain untainted. We arrived at a small house that we went into, and passed the simple rooms while heading out to a small courtyard behind the house. The place seemed to emanate peace as the girl sat herself down on the green grass in the courtyard and looked towards me. "Big brother, do you have everything prepared?" I nodded at this girl as I thought about all the foods and essentials I had packed into my rings after I reduced the number of skill books in it. I had learned so many skills that my panel was a pain to look at. I only chose to learn lower-ranking skills that I could keep active at all times to build up the proficiency, as too much time would have to be put in to bring them up. The goal was to combine these many lower-ranking skills and slowly advance them to higher grades until I had many high-ranking skills that were compatible to work with. A few of my rank A skills were only a few points from reaching 100 as it took a longer period of time for higher-ranking skills to rise in proficiency. I was excited to combine some of them when the time came. I pulled out one of the plain crystals I held and transferred it to the girl while asking, "Who are you?" She smiled sweetly as she twirled with the crystal in her hands and replied, "You can call me Sophia. I'm a sort of a guide, I guess." Laughter came out of her fair lips as she hesitatingly said this. She was one of the figures I saw in the attached rooms that were present when I talked to the planetary core. She had her own part to play in this, the same as Mikhail and Kazuhiko. I had my own, much important part that would start right now. I nodded to the girl as the crystal in her hands shone a blinding blue light. I couldn't activate it no matter how much I tried before, but a simple touch from her had done something to it. "Big brother, are you ready?" I rose up while looking at the surroundings of the courtyard and the blue skies all around us. I enjoyed the surroundings around me as I could feel my heartbeat increasing as the time neared. I nodded at the girl whose body began shining blue just like the crystal in her hands. The blue light expanded and became a square box as it covered the area I was standing on and became brighter. I could feel transparent lines of energy wrapping around me as the light became more and more condensed. After it wrapped all around me, a blue beam that seemed to reach the ends of the sky shot out, and it disappeared. The white-haired girl watched the energy settling down as a wide square crystal materialized near her at a high speed. She grabbed the crystal the moment it finished forming and took it with her into the small house. She placed it on top of the table as she looked at the complex lines of data that began showing. Her crystal blue eyes changed to become blank for a few seconds as a blank voice escaped her lips. "Just like they brought the apocalypse to us, rained down decimation and destruction upon them." There was no one to reply or hear this voice, and the girl's eyes quickly changed to become clear blue again. She kept her attention on the square crystal as she washed her hands and continued to mix the milk into the floury mix, a sweet smile settling back on her face as she hummed back and forth. I couldn't really describe the weird feeling I was currently experiencing as I traveled with dense blue energy all around me. My vision was fully obscured as this process continued. I didn't know how much time had passed before I felt a change, and then an impact occurred. Boom. It felt as if I had made a landing as my vision cleared and I found myself on a grassy clearing with walls all around me. Information came into my head as an image built itself in my mind and I realized where I was. I was on the only floor of a rankest dungeon that had appeared on a snowy plain. My eyesight stretched out as I saw the hazy appearance of a dungeon monolith that was shining a bright red, showing an imminent dungeon break would be occurring at any moment. A significant amount of energy was used for my descent that would allow for me to break out of the dungeon with the quickest time possible without allowing any possible intrusions from others. In the dungeon floor, it felt like I was looking down at the figure that seemed to be my body, but at the same time it wasn't. This was my origin, and if people actually neared and entered the dungeon, it would be what they fought against. If my origin lost, a significant amount of essence would be lost with it and energy would be used to reconstruct it. If it faced destruction multiple times in short time span, the inflow of energy would not be able to keep up and my origin would face complete destruction, along with me. None of that would be happening though, as the blinking red light of the monolith intensified and a dungeon break occurred. I had finally arrived in the beast world. Boom. The dungeon break caused an entirely new feeling to appear as I felt my vision returning to normal and I began to feel the slight cold winds around me. I opened my eyes to a vast plain of white snow with very few vegetation around me. Only large white trees could be seen around me as I felt the air of this world for the first time. The first noticeable change that I noticed was the abundance of essence that could be felt in the air. The energy seemed palpable as I stretched my hands out and felt everything around me. The air on this cold and windy night felt like the most refreshing breeze I had ever had the chance of taking in, making me enjoy the feeling for a few seconds. I reveled in this feeling as I casted, flight, and rose into the air. The winds became more furious the higher I went as I began to observe the fantastical sight around me. In the skies not too far away, something I never thought I would be seeing in my lifetime could be seen. A huge landmass was somehow floating in the sky, the size of it no less than the cities I had become used to seeing while flying over the skies of the Blessed Empire. I didn't know how the landmass remained so securely in the skies as it towered above the ground magnificently. I activated all of my stealth skills and used eagle eyes to further check these unbelievable sights I was seeing. Flying closer and closer to the landmass, I had to come to a stop far from it as the close the eye neared. I began to feel dangerous auras on the landmass that were in no way less powerful than the strongest beings I had faced so far. Staying more than a mile away and using eagle eyes, I was able to see the outline of the huge landmass that took my breath away. I could only see a tiny bit of the land, which held white trees larger than me by more than 10 times, and droves of white-furred beasts running around without any reservations. I observed the piece of land in front of me for a few more minutes before I moved away and flew even higher to get a better look of everything around me. The higher I flew, the more dangerous and cold the winds became, nearly making me feel the cold even with the many defensive skills and attributes that have already reached rank S. Once I rose at a high enough distance, I looked beneath me as I saw even more of those landmass that seemed to be floating in the skies. Far off in the distance, there was a large collection of these land masses near one another, with lines of connections apparent among them. On these land masses could be seen twinklings of light, as the land that was actually on the ground beneath them held grand buildings that were surrounded by an expansive walled fortress. The fortress was a work of art as it ascended around the huge mountain these buildings were in. 3 large mountain peaks surrounded the large kingdom on the ground as more than 4 expansive land masses floated in the periphery around it. The sheer size of the place took my breath away as I could only observe a portion of it. This was the location that the system said I would begin my journey on. This was the only place where humans held supremacy in this world. This was the Frozen Kingdom. I moved across the snowy skies filled with sharp winds as I continued to fly even lower and neared one of the doors of the huge walled entrances of the fortified kingdom. I didn't come too close before I could feel movement from the top of the wall. Multiple white-winged beasts rose up and met me in the skies. On top of them, figures wearing glistening white armors stood with sharp weapons pointing towards me. Hold! There were multiple figures on each of the winged beasts, with many of them letting out power similar to rank A or lower, and I could feel at least 3 that seemed to be rank S. I did as they asked, stopped abruptly in the air as I expected this type of welcome. I had spent too much time lectured by the system on the few sparse memories it obtained from the absorbed beasts, and knew how to act when I approached any of the kingdoms in this world. I remained quiet as we all floated in the skies, the humans on the winged beasts checking me out closely as the seconds passed. A thorough evaluation followed in the next few minutes with a few lights landing on my body. Once they confirmed my figure and used specific skills that most likely checked to see if I had any semblance of an aura of a dangerous demon or beast, they lowered the sharp spears they were pointing towards me. A snort was heard from the lead guard. Mercenaries these days think they can come and go as they please because of their increasing demand. The leader was speaking with a disdainful expression as he looked towards me, motioning for the rest of the guards on the winged beasts to fly down. This was the environment I was betting on. Due to increased tensions and conflicts, powerful beings acting as mercenaries were more active than ever in this world. Kingdoms continued to look for powerful forces to reinforce their safety. I remained quiet and the guards spoke once more. Haven't seen you pass by here before, so I'm assuming you're a new recruit. Use this badge to confirm your identity when you leave in and out again. A red badge which had the face of a stern man appeared on the guard's hands and flew towards me. Be sure to not cause any trouble, or we won't hesitate to take you down. His spear was sheathed as I nodded at his words, and at his signal, followed the winged beast he was on to fly over the huge fortress and step into the frozen kingdom for the first time. Passing over the tall walls, we went down towards the road that led to the buildings that shined with lights further in. The guards warned me once again before telling me not to break even more rules like flying over the lands. Only people given specific recognition could do this and go from one place to another. If you didn't have that recognition, then even if you were allowed permission to enter the 4 land masses floating in the sky that people in higher positions resided in, you would have to walk on the long bridges leading towards them. I watched the environment around me as I walked further in, noticing many guards patrolling at every point. My power that only seemed to give off the vibes of rank S did not raise any eyebrows, as there were many guards at rank A and the captains leading them seemed to be rank S. I soon reached the buildings where even this late at night, there was a bustle of activities going on. The buildings were built in a medieval style, looking like grand ancient architecture that shone with the balls of light that were lined up across the streets. I could see various pubs and restaurants, with a few larger buildings that seemed like hotels apparent at every corner. The people walking around looked no different than the humans I have known all my life. Some had fair complexions and others had dark complexions. Hair colors of all sorts were abundant though, as I had seen a few people sporting radiant red hair, some blue, and others extremely dark shining hair. There were even a few mixtures of humans and beasts, where some people were walking around with tails or others had ears or other facial characteristics of beasts. I marveled at the sight of all these new faces. Many of the people I met seemed to be rank F or E awakened individuals as they let off weak levels of power while the large percentage remained as normal humans. But the number of people that would be considered awakened definitely exceeded the numbers you would commonly see in the Empire or United Federation. I continued walking around and taking in the new sights as I went further in. At the center of this entrance town was a building standing out amongst the many that surrounded it. It had a striking set of words plastered at the front. It was Mercenaries' Hideout. It seemed like I had found the place to begin my journey in this world as I opened the wide doors into the boisterously loud building. It was a busy scene as people moved in and out. There were seats and tables in one section where people were eating and conversing, and there was another section that looked like a place where official business took place with workers standing behind a counter. The conversations were fairly interesting as I listened in while observing everything around me. Hey, how can you drink so comfortably when demons are building their forces to come kill all of us, huh? Why you worry too much? The Frozen Kingdom has never fallen in the millennium of its creation. You think some ugly mugs would swoop down and do it in a few years? Ugly mugs? You obviously haven't fought against them before. They're relentless and fight with everything they have. Trash like you wouldn't stand a chance. A few drunks were trading insults back and forth at the state of affairs, talking about heavy topic with a light-hearted tone. From the information I received from the system, the demons they mentioned were the same ones that targeted my world. They were able to set a foothold in the beast world and are now expanding their forces to conquer every corner of the world. The Frozen Kingdom was one of the remaining kingdoms that stood strong against them. I had found out the identity of the enemies that caused a tremendous amount of pain and death, and I was ready to begin rising up in this world by taking everything I could. So how would I go about it? Nearly infinite mana to play with, but currently only at rank S, and only holding a few rank S skills at that. I haven't even been able to max my attributes while absorbing rank S cores. From the possible pathways discussed with the system, becoming a mercenary in this world was the fastest way to do this. Mercenaries commissioned by the kingdoms took the role of defending it in the front lines whenever rogue beasts or demons threatened them, and were routinely tasked with forming groups and reducing the size of the beasts populating nests. An example of a nest was one of the large land masses floating in the air that I had seen while flying over here. Nests were a place where large amounts of essence congregated, giving birth to a multitude of beasts continuously. Were these nests left alone, mindless beasts would overflow and eventually a large amount can rise up to threaten the safety of the surrounding kingdoms. From piecing together the memories of the 3 fairly knowledgeable rank S beasts that I took down which the system absorbed half of their essence, the Frozen Kingdom currently had 3 nests in its nearby surroundings that were monitored and routinely cleared if needed. I could only imagine the beasts congregating in those nests, as even while observing one more than a mile away, I could already feel powerful presences that I hadn't come across before. They posed high levels of danger, but to me, they were also huge opportunities to rapidly gain more rank A and S skill books, as well as skills of the next rank. They were one of the main ways I would be increasing my power rapidly before I found a way to grow my influence and work to limit the expansion of the demon forces until I can move on to the next stage. But currently, I was in a different world that had an entirely different way of living, with no money for anything. I looked through the many cores I had farmed the few days that I spent in the Blessed Empire before coming over here. The cores that condensed from the beasts that hunters killed under the system of strength that the Planetary Core instituted were a broken-down collection of essences that were more easily absorbable by the newly awakening hunters. Beasts normally had their own essence cores in their bodies, but when killed by the hunters with the system, these essence cores would be extracted and changed to smaller cores if they were normal beasts, or into either cores and skill books or items if they were powerful beasts considered as a boss or titan. The inhibit ants of this world were all born differently, with some like the dragons receiving innate skills and energy from its powerful bloodline, or humans training for years taking in the essence of the world while also killing and absorbing the cores of beasts and honing their usage of essence to create deadly and destructive ways of using their energy. People and beast folk like these usually took the role of mercenaries, adventurers, or as soldiers that defended their respective kingdoms. But the fact that cores were widespread and used universally meant that I had the currency of this world, albeit it was broken down into small portions. I approached one of the desks that held a stern woman with a business demeanor and pulled out a few cores to exchange for the common currency as the gears in my mind continued to churn while absorbing and learning everything about this new world. The woman at the front desk had a stern attitude as she handled all the mercenaries coming in and out. I went forward and laid out a pile of rank B cores to start it off so I could gauge the level of wealth I held. 50 rank B cores rolled on the table, the woman taking her time to count them all carefully. Her cold voice rang out. 50 deconstructed rank B cores, amounting to 10 full cores. They can be exchanged for 100 gold coins. I listened to this conversion from cores to the common currency of gold coins and nodded my agreement towards the front desk. 100 glistening gold coins appeared on the table the next instant and I took them into one of my storage rings. Before I turned and left, the woman spoke again in the same cold tone. Will you be joining the extermination task force heading to the Sky Peak nest tomorrow? Your power matches the requirements. A task force that was heading towards one of the nests? My eyes gleamed as I heard about this and I asked for more information. The task force is made up of mostly rank A and a few rank S mercenaries that are leaving at 9 a.m. sharp. If you plan to join, here is an identification medal that will keep track of all the mercenaries on this mission. Don't be late. I grabbed the outstretched medal from the woman and thanked her for the information as I turned away. The medal was very light on the hands and had the symbol of 2 crossing swords. I placed some energy into it and felt thin lines of connection to a few points in Mercenary's hideout, as well as points that extended all over the town. I got used to all of these new things as I became glad at being able to visit a nest where monsters congregated so soon. There were terrifying presences on just the one floating landmass that I saw on the way here, and I didn't want to risk my life by going there alone while I still haven't accumulated all that many rank S and rank S skills. Aside from the collection of rank A or lower mercenaries, a sparse amount of rank S could be seen as I exited the hideout and walked outside. My next destination was a beautifully designed inn that had various women standing outside of it. The few that I passed by called out to me. Hey handsome, do you need any company tonight? Big boy, are you up for some fun? Women of varying ages and sizes were spread out and talking to many of the people that were going in and out of this large lodging. It seemed completely normal as some could be seen heading inside with someone they just began talking to while others left the lodging with exhausted faces. I ignored the calls and comments from the many people around me as I went inside the building, and went in even faster after I saw a guy with a face full of makeup heading my way. The inside of the building was much quieter, with the noise stopping the moment you passed through the double doors. I went towards the counter where a red-haired girl was acting as the receptionist and asked for a single room. A single room for the night will be 2 gold coins, sir. We also have the special offer of reserving a room for an entire week, all for the small price of 10 gold coins. I nodded towards the girl throwing out the sales pitch as I picked up a sheet that wrote down the different options and their rates. The sheet also had a section below that described the foods they offered in their dining area. Just the single room works, and let me have the fiery soup and rhinos special for now. Yes, sir. It all comes out to a total of 3 gold coins. The girl cheerfully gave me a bronze key and led to a table in the dining area where I didn't wait too long for the food to be brought out. The dish that was called fiery soup was an extremely spicy broth that came in large wooden bowl which had bountiful diced up meats that tasted better than anything I've had before. The spice lingered in your mouth and got hotter the more that you ate, with meat being extremely soft. The rhino special was a platter of what seemed like prime ribs, but much larger and much more appetizing. I spent the next 30 minutes enjoying what was arguably the best of the many meals I would be having from now on before I went towards room number 34 that the key took the shape of. I climbed the sturdy wooden stairs of the hotel and walked through a narrow hallway before finding the room and entering. A simple bed filled with feathers was in the middle of the room, with a door leading to a wide bathtub-looking structure and a toilet off to the side. There was a ladle that was likely used for bathing attached to a large bucket that had steaming water in it. I curiously went to check out the bathroom and found the water in the bucket to continue replenishing to a specific level after I scooped some out. It remained the same temperature of warmth at the same time too. The bucket holding the water was attached to the ground with a pipe at the bottom of it. I got used to all these new things I was seeing for the first time as I reflected on every wondrous sight I saw today and then moved on to combine more of my skills. Tomorrow would be the first beginning of my rise from this place, and I wanted to be at my peak. The only way for my strength to jump crazily was to gain a skill of higher rank, and there were 2 ways of doing this for me. I could combine multiple compatible S-rank skills until they broke through to the next rank, or start off even lower with rank B skills to rank and then rank 8S. The other way was to simply hunt and kill multiple beasts and collect the skills the old-fashioned way. I would proactively use both ways, as using multiple skills and keeping them active was not a problem for me. There were multiple rank B skills that I learned more than a week ago as I was leaving the United Federation that had long since reached 100 proficiency. There were also 2 rank A skills that were compatible that I would be combining. The rest of the rank A skills would also be ready for combination soon, giving me even more things to look forward to. None of the rank S skills were anywhere near a 100 though, as it became progressively harder to raise the proficiency of higher ranked skills. I used the nulb skill combination function and was able to produce a few rank B+ skills, as well as a new rank A+ skill by combing the rank E, frigid impermanence, and permafrost, to bring out A+ Arctic zone freeze and destabilize an entire area of 10 meters, shattering everything in it. I learned permafrost as I was leaving the United Federation, so I made the goal to spam this skill a whole lot while I was doing cleanup around the Empire before I left so I could raise the proficiency the fastest. It was a skill that had obvious compatibility with the frigid impermanence. The new Arctic zone skill made me excited to combine another rank A+ compatible skill and put them together to watch for what rank S skill would come out of it. The rank B+ skills I was able to synthesize were hardened body armor, strengthened strikes, mirror of repulsion, and emerald skin. The moment they appeared on the attribute panel, I activated them and waited for their proficiency to rise once more before I combined them too. It would be a long process, but my power would continue to spike the more skills I combined. I laid down on the feathered mattress as I waited for the next day to arrive, where my adventure would fully begin. I slept more comfortably than I imagined. The denser concentration of energy in this world made it feel like you were in the best possible location anywhere you went. I went down the wooden stairs to see people already actively moving in and out of the inn. The receptionist with the red hair was already up at the counter. I went towards her and ordered another fiery soup to have for breakfast before I went out. Thus, the morning began on a happy note. I moved outside into the town and saw the world during daytime for the first time. A blanket of snow covered the buildings and the paths, making for a beautiful sight as the rays of the sun shone through. I looked up to see the huge mountains surrounding us far in the distance, as well as the 4 grand land masses that were stably positioned in the air without a single movement. I still couldn't even begin to understand how such a thing was possible. A few people could be seen every now and then ascending the long brides attached further inland from this town. I looked away from the majestic sight of floating islands and went towards the mercenaries' hideout, where a collection of colorful rugged men and women were tiered. Putting energy into the metal I received the day before, most of the thin lines of people were grouped up in one location that allowed me to find them all very easily. There was a large space behind the grand building that had white-winged beasts moving around. Someone was holding a large basin that he pulled out large chunks of meat from to feed the beasts. The people in the extermination task force were tiered in a group on the side talking amongst themselves as they all waited for the appointed time. The minutes passed by quickly as a large man whose entire body emanated power came out to the clearing. "All right, boys and girls, gather around." At these words, the mercenaries that were mostly rank A with a few rank S ones in the group all looked towards this figure with full attention. The mission this time is plain and simple. The Sky Peak nest is showing signs of rapid movements again, which means the beasts are increasing and getting more restless. We're not going to spend too much time there, just clear out a few leaders and their groups before we return. I am Captain Reiner, and I'll be leading this excursion to make sure there are no deaths. The large man spoke out with a powerful voice that seemed to rouse the spirits of everyone here. After we successfully return, each person in attendance will receive 5,000 gold coins and keep any cores from the beasts they manage to take down. At the mention of rewards, the mercenaries shouted out as we began moving towards the large groups of winged beasts. Each beast could take on more than 5 people, and I found myself soaring through the skies with 3 rank A mercenaries and 1 rank S. I would follow the lead of others for now as I learn more about these nests and choose how to move from there. The winged beasts we were riding on had heads that looked similar to an eagle's, but their wide bodies that allowed more than 5 people to stand on showed they were something else. I found out they were called white-winged beasts, a type of beast that could easily be tamed as long as it was fed daily. We flew on these beasts and passed the huge wall of a fortress where guards with similar beasts were stationed. Mercenaries assigned to specific missions had the pass to fly over the town if they were using these beasts. We left the entry town of the Frozen Kingdom and went towards the huge floating landmass I had seen on the way here. I listened to the conversations of 2 of the mercenaries that seemed to be familiar with each other who were talking about this nest. "Oi, remember to follow the lead of that captain. I've heard some inflated nobodies ignored commands and went further into the beast nest only to never come out. TSK, how many times do you have to give pointers? I know we'll definitely be staying in the outer ring of the nest this time around. There should be very few S-rank beasts out there." The 2 seemed to be arguing and giving each other tips to stay alive all at once. But their words indicated that there were powerful beasts congregated in this floating island. I wasn't sure how far into the nest the beasts higher than rank S would start to appear. I kept my mouth shut just in case, as I didn't want there to be any possibility of me giving something about my identity away. I would learn as things progress and find some time to locate a library after this to spend some time there and see what more I can learn about this world. The collection of memories that the system put together after absorbing the essence of many beasts was just that, mostly memories from low-ranking beasts. I would have to do my own research to fully grasp the workings of a place like this kingdom where humans had control. We neared the floating landmass after 20 minutes, where the outline of the island became visible. Using eagle eyes, I watched as I saw groups of beasts walking around near the edge of the landmass. Dense and extremely tall trees blanketed in snow began rising as my sight looked further in, where barely anything but a white outline of trees could be seen. The white-winged beasts landed on the edge of the landmass as they drew the attention of surrounding beasts that rushed over here. Beasts ranging from C and all the way to A were running about. Captain Reiner took the lead, jumping off the winged beast like a valiant warrior as his body seemed to be bubbling with energy. There was a large red broadsword that appeared in his arms, which he swung towards the coming beasts. A parabolic line of flames was drawn out, going forward and bisecting all the incoming beasts. "All right, lads, the battle begins now. When you see the ugly faces of rank S beasts appear, especially the larger leaders, be on high alert." The leaders he was mentioning were what I considered bosses or titans back then, with them holding a denser collection of essence that allowed for skills and items to be farmed from. Many were large to correspond to their large amounts of energy, but the truly powerful ones could be small, as they held enough control over their energy to remain that size and use it to their advantage. The mercenaries spread out as those of the S rank took the lead, with me following closely behind the captain as we went further into the Sky Peak nest. I was able to see the power of the humans of this world firsthand as I observed the leading Peak Rank S captain hold his own against a Rank S boss. We didn't have to move too far in to come in contact with them. After passing through the large trees that were covered by snow, ferocious-looking white beasts began appearing. They had disproportionately large hands and feet with smaller bodies that didn't seem to match. This size was even more exaggerated when it came to the Rank S leader that neared 10 meters. Sharp icicles would form at the wave of these beasts' hands as the mercenaries worked together to bring them down. The leading S rank, Captain Reiner, was holding his own while standing against a leader, his large broadsword roiling with fire elements as each clash left wounds on the beast. I worked with the group I came with as I continued observing everything first, using the rank Infernal Purge, every few seconds after watching some of the fire power of the few Rank S mercenaries in the group. The blazing flames that came crashing down were extremely deadly to the normal beasts, setting their entire bodies aflame if a single one touched them. As for the looting of cores, the mercenaries cut open the heads of the beasts they killed to pull out cores much larger than what I had been used to seeing. These were the full cores of beasts that weren't broken down into smaller portions by the system that hunters back in my world worked with. When it came to the monsters I took down myself, I recalled the words of the system. I would be in a different world, but still holding that same power. The only change was that it would only be triggered when I came in contact with the beings that I took down. To make things even more seamless, the extracted essence in the form of skill books, items, or cores would directly be placed in one of my storage rings when I would normally harvest cores like other inhabitants of this world. With this in mind, the extermination groups moved forward while staying close together and taking down the beasts that came rushing out. I was amazed at the strength of the humans here, as even the Rank A mercenaries utilized their strength and essence better than the hunters I had always observed. Only after the hunters begin to fully utilize skill combination, do I see them catching up and eventually exceeding this level of strength. The S-rank hunters came out with colorfully destructive spells that mowed down the normal Rank A beasts and would only be blocked by Rank S leaders. One red-haired mercenary raised her magic staff forward and a blazing phoenix appeared in the next moment, rushing towards a group of beasts where it exploded and engulfed them in flames in an instant. I observed all of this as I continued to use Infernal Purge to take down normal Rank A and S beasts, along with a few Rank A leaders so that I could increase my collection of Rank A skills. Today wasn't the day for me to go all out and massacre everything on sight. I would watch and learn as much as I could, before I find the time to come out here myself and go all out. I was filled with expectations as I thought about running around this huge nest with all the beasts in it. I would have confirmed the highest power of beasts that lay deeper in the nest first though, as I couldn't play around with my life. The power I was showing matched the Rank S mercenaries, as even though the damage was somewhat lower than Rank S skills, I could put up the act that Infernal Purge could be casted more frequently because of its low damage. My role in the task force became handling the large groups of normal Rank A and S beasts, while the other Rank S mercenaries clashed against the leaders. Low-key. I had to start off by being low-key for now. Captain Reiner began looking towards me favorably as I made the work easier by clearing many of the beasts with the area of attack skills. My attention wasn't all placed onto this one thing though, as during the hunt I had always been checking and combining the active defense and support skills that continued to rise in proficiency. Through the combinations, I was able to produce a few compatible Rank B+ skills that weren't worth a mention as they were right now, but would be useful when I received Rank A skills through them. It would take a few more days, but those few days meant more than 4 Rank A skills would come to light from the combination of multiple Rank B+ skills. I smiled at this thought, as rising skills this way meant I could continue to build up compatible skills that will be able to combine to Rank S with no problems. Defense and support skills that boosted me by a large margin would not be a game of chance anymore. The extermination task force was performing extremely well with the decent leadership from the captain and my addition that made the work all the easier. An entire half a day passed as we moved across the fringes of the Sky Peak nest, never daring to go too far inland. After we cleared many of the disproportionately sized beasts, we came across other varieties as we went further in. After we finished clearing a few more beast groups, the mercenaries came to a halt at the command of Captain Reiner. His hand was in the air as he looked forward with deep concentration. We were in a position that was further inland than any other time as the beasts had begun to thin out in the periphery. His large voice rang out. "We will stop here today. If we move any further in, we will intrude in an epic-ranked beast territory." At the mention of this, the mercenaries adopted solemn faces as they began to move back. My heart palpitated as I confirmed the next rank above S epic rank. Many ideas passed in my head before I quickly knocked them down. I wouldn't be so rash as to have a head-on collision of something that high of a rank before I collect many defensive rank S skills. I would rather be overly prepared and protected than suddenly lose my life with rash decisions. I breathed out calmly as I followed the rest of the group to move out of the huge land floating in the sky. A voice rang out. I was lost in my thoughts. "Rookie, exemplary work out there today. It cut our time by more than an hour. Where has someone like you with a large mana pool been hiding all this time?" I came out of my head and smiled at the captain that appeared beside me. I was honing my skills privately until I was confident enough to take on these beasts. Honing your skills until you reach such a high rank? You're too cautious. If you had trained with other mercenaries, that flame skill of yours might have already reached this rank. He paused as he looked me up and down before continuing. "Come back with a few of my people so you can get to know the mercenaries you'll be working with from now on. We can't let a talent like you go to waste." Sure. I listened to the large man's words and agreed to go along. I had to become known in this frozen kingdom little by little. I wouldn't start off with an explosive show of power that would raise heads, but become known slowly as my power increased in the shadows. We flew away from the floating nest on the white-winged beasts, passing through the cold winds that now also had the addition of heavy snow as dark clouds hung overhead. My sight was locked onto this Sky Peak nest that I would most definitely visit for myself in the future. I was lost in my thoughts as we passed through the falling snow and became entranced with the scene playing out. The land floating in the sky receded from view as we approached the outline of the frozen kingdom. The minutes passed by in the skies as I introduced myself to the mercenaries I worked with today. We passed over the huge fortress wall and landed in the back of the mercenaries' hideout, in a few minutes, where 5,000 gold was given to every participating mercenary as a surprised receptionist came out and saw us returning much earlier than expected. I was looking forward to learning the rank A skill books now sitting in one of my storage rings as I followed Captain Reiner's group. It was him and 4 other S-rank hunters. After the extermination task was confirmed and the rewards handed out, we went further into the kingdom past the entrance town. The buildings became larger and grander the further in we went, and the beginning of one of the grandiose bridges that ascended towards the sky to one of the floating lands above us appeared. The bridge was wide and long, with rank 2S guards decked in an exquisite white metal armor standing guard. Anyone that wanted to pass the checkpoint had to have proper authorization, or they would face the cold blades of the 2 guards if they tried anything funny. The boisterous attitude of Captain Reiner came to a stop as we neared the bridge and saw an escort taking place. An exquisite carriage waited besides the bridge. A veiled woman that became surrounded by peak rank S guards got off and was walked towards the bridge. Captain Reiner's entire demeanor changed as his voice lowered before he respectfully called out to the figures in front of us in a tone I was hearing for the first time today. "Princess, it's my extreme pleasure being graced with your sight today." His voice was low but clear, ringing out clearly in the ears of the figures up front. The guards standing beside the veiled woman showed annoyed expression as they turned to look at Reiner, seemingly this not being the first time they've come across something like this. The veiled woman turned to this direction and nodded towards Reiner, which made him break out the largest smile as if he had won the lottery. I looked at this scene in fascination as it seemed this captain was completely stricken with the woman up front, but could only look from afar. The figures turned and began climbing towards the bridge, but not before I felt a gaze linger on me for a few seconds. I turned to the escort of people that were leaving and wondered if I had just thought wrong. Reiner moved with much more vigor after this as we entered into a much more expensive-looking tavern than the ones I've seen on the way here. The tavern was much more high-class, with private rooms that gave it an air of calmness. There were no boisterous noises from mercenaries, as it seemed a noise-canceling function was activated the moment the doors to the private rooms closed. We soon grabbed a private room of our own and sat on a thick soft furred carpet around a circular table. Reiner was animatedly moving around as the best dishes were ordered and the mercenaries began talking. Hey, Captain Reiner seems to be completely taken in by the terrifying Ice Princess. Bah, what do you know? I heard Her Highness's main guard would be retiring soon, and I just signed up for the possibility of being chosen when the selection happens. Reiner had began biting down on the huge chunks of meat as he talked back to the jeering mercenary. Oh, you actually think you stand a chance from all those geniuses that are fighting for the position? The burly captain gave a hard look to the voice that spoke as he snorted and replied. My power is peak rank S. If I don't stand a chance, nobody does. The mercenaries continued their back and forth as I listened in and enjoyed the food. The Ice Princess was apparently one of the royalties residing and controlling the snowy peak that was floating not too far from us. The subject of the people currently in power who controlled the forces of the Frozen Kingdom made me think about my own plans to increase my influence in the future. The easiest path was to rise to epic rank or higher, obtaining a level of strength that would allow me to carry out many plans. But how do I go about it without causing bloodshed and strife on these people that were not the enemies I came here for? Rising through the ranks in times of war would be the best possible outcome, but the Frozen Kingdom was surrounded by mountains and had tight defenses. The forces of demons that were spreading out might target this kingdom soon, but I didn't know when. For now, I would prepare as much as I could before events explode. There were many titles under my name. The Ice Princess by the commoners. The Doted Princess by the nobles. The Frigid Bitch by my enemies. But none of that mattered to me, because I was living on borrowed time. I had no energy to spare to those that fawned over me or those that criticized me. I held the unique skill, golden rule, that was passed down since my beloved mother met her death. On the bed when she lay with her life force slowly leaking out, she screamed to the little girl who was in shock. Be smart, she screamed. Be strong, she said. Use the power that I am passing down to the fullest, as a terrible calamity is coming towards us all. She said all of this to a frightened girl that was losing her mother, and then passed away. I imprinted those last words into my brain from that day forward, using the skill handed down to me to get through many of the political messes in one piece. The skill showed a dark light whenever my older brother, the Crown Prince, looked at me. So I avoided him and anything to do with him like a plague. It showed a green light whenever my naive younger brother played with me, so I kept him close and made him rely on me. It showed a light blue light with my father, so I acted as the most perfect daughter and gained his affection, making me cruise through to my unshakable position that I have currently. Those that crossed me often met with misfortune or death, making those cowards utter the name of frigid bitch whenever they gossiped among themselves. I used my means to establish an extensive information agency that saw all the happenings of the kingdom and its surroundings, with more than half of its departments focused on my older brother who shone in a dangerous black light. But all of this wasn't enough. My own fate was still murky. My unique skill showed me that undoubtedly all that I had done had changed nothing, and that death was still approaching. A calamity was still coming. No amount of information I collected was enough. This fostered something that was my only weakness to this day, the fear of the approaching death. Even the strongest powerhouses of this kingdom did not deter the skill from sending me the same message. I worried about the demons that were constantly increasing their influence across the lands as I thought about the impending calamity. I exhausted all my resources. I surrounded myself with the best of guards from the kingdom that my escorts were no less powerful than those protecting the crown prince, the bastard that would most likely take control of the kingdom once my father passed. I could feel the malice he had towards me even though my position did not come close to threatening him right now. I could recently feel his malice towards our father, which made me even more cautious to the point that I began putting plans into place that would put my own life on the line. I didn't bring myself to act yet, as I continued calculating all the possible scenarios. Would it be regicide, corruption, or betrayal that I had to stop? No answers presented themselves over the years, as my fate continued to become darker and darker. That is, until today. The change occurred when I was making my way back to Snowy Peak. After my attention was called to one of the many people that looked at me with fervent eyes, I witnessed a blinding golden light that completely took me by surprise. If I didn't have the veil on my face today, they would have all seen my shocked expression at the sight of one man brilliantly shining with a golden light. I moved my sight the instant I could see him begin turning and resumed climbing the bridge. My lips moved silently as a message that could only be heard by the ears of one of my most trusted aides came out. The aide hiding in the shadows was surprised, but quickly moved as she pulled back from her position and stayed with the carriage below. She was an expert in her own right, and would not be caught monitoring the group that was still gazing towards me. My shock was due to the fact that I had never seen a golden light on a single being my entire life. The unique skill, Golden Rule, had activated to its peak of the color gold as it let me know I had found the thing I was searching for all this time. The color gold was the highest it could show, and even that golden light was shining so bright that it almost blinded my eyes. This unknown figure would be the one to save me from death. He would be the one that stands between me and a calamity. My heart fluttered as I tried to calm myself. This feeling was not one that many people could come across. The feeling of finally having something you have been searching for so long in arm's length. I would not let it get away. Whatever I had to do, even if I had to give up my soul, I would find a way to hold on to this opportunity. This person would have to be treated with utmost care. I thought for a bit before my lips moved once more, sending another message to the already shocked aide who didn't think her shock could increase even more today. Now I just had to wait. The meal with the mercenaries ended on a good note, with me hearing tidbits of information that made me all the more curious to find a library in this town and see what things I can glean from it. I broke off from the loud mercenaries that continued to discuss the same princess and other nobles they took fancy to as I walked around different parts of this large kingdom. Figures of mostly humans and a few demi-humans packed the streets as everything ranging from taverns, inns, and stores selling a variety of things were present. Some stores held weapons and armor made from different materials and beasts, others were selling small but colorful beasts as pets in shops that many people congregated in. I walked past all of these sites for the next few minutes as I soon came upon a large building with the sign of a book up front. I opened the large doors and came into a scene of peace, with people quietly moving around as books floated on and off shelves. I went towards the librarian that turned out to be a middle-aged man with a goatee and asked for some books on the kingdom's history. He looked my figure up and down in a perplexed manner as he grabbed the staff near him and tapped it down 4 times, which led 4 thick books to fly out and land on the counter. Only people of higher status chose to spend their time reading books, so there was a fee to use the reading space in the library. I gave the librarian 1 gold and carried the books towards a corner of the building with enthusiasm. I hadn't read books in quite a while, and looked forward to learning about the large world I was in. The last half of the day passed like this, with me doing something I never pictured myself doing when I first became a hunter. Flipping through the many pages and reading was not too bad, as almost everything was new information I was learning about for the first time. Also, through the use of recorder, I was able to quickly bring up information on something that I had seen before by just recalling a few words about it, whereby, like a film, the moment that I read about it would replay in front of me. I was looking forward to getting more skills like these that don't necessarily have any offensive and defensive power, but were useful as they were. The information I learned was expansive. Starting with the Frozen Kingdom and its 4 peaks, the kingdom was under the rule of a powerful individual whose strength was a rank above epic. The ruler of this kingdom is called the Trias ruler, King Rourke Belmont. He had led this human kingdom that remained the only one of its kind in the beast world to prosperity for the past 100 years. Under his rule, humans faced no persecution and he welcomed demi-humans to come live in the kingdom in search of better lives. His peaceful policies allowed for the continued growth of his kingdom and the goodwill of the mythical kingdoms of beasts. Rulers of the beast kingdoms did not bother with the rising kingdom in the north, where it was plagued by the cold environment and tough terrain that previous rulers could not fully overcome. King Rourke made his legacy by elevating the kingdom to greater heights during his reign, until it stood toe-to-toe with the most powerful of kingdoms in the world. Surrounded by mountains, the frozen kingdom was easy to defend, with enemies only able to trek from one direction. The kingdom held 4 great land masses above them that were called Snowy Peak, Frozen Paradise, Summit Peak, and King's Crown. The kingdom thrived on vegetation and animals that grew specialized for the cold, with a wide array of plants that allowed for a booming economy. There was such a wide array of history with this kingdom that I was almost overwhelmed with the task of rising to become one of its influential figures in the near future. But the tremendous power I held affirmed my resolution. I would follow the plan of taking down beasts in these surrounding nests around this kingdom and slowly grow. I will clash with epic-ranked beasts the moment I was fully confident and equipped with a wide array of rank S skills. Surely, even if it takes some time, my goals would be achieved. I left the library behind as I processed tons of information about the world I was in. After spending a few hours reading, I felt like I deserved a break. I found the same inn I stayed in the night before and enjoyed the different types of meals before going up the wooden steps to a room upstairs. I enjoyed the ancient-looking aesthetics as I fell on the bed and relaxed my body. Many thoughts came and went as I looked up to the ceiling and tried to fall asleep. This would be denied of me, however, as I heard light knocks from the door right after. I became alert as there shouldn't really be anyone that would need to do this right now, and hoped it was somebody working for the inn. It couldn't be any of the mercenaries I worked with today either. I went forward with caution and opened the door, to be faced with the figure of a woman all dressed in black bowing down. "My deepest apologies, sir. I was tasked with delivering a message from my lady. Would you be so kind as to let me in for a few seconds?" The person in front of me was fully covered top to bottom in a black material, and let out a rank S level of power. I thought about her words and wondered just what had occurred to cause somebody's attention to turn to me. I had been very careful, to the level of only using a rank A skill and showing power equivalent to a normal rank S. Maybe I was overthinking things and this would not be a major deal. I looked around the dark hallway of the inn as I nodded to the woman and closed the door. The moment we were enclosed in the room, dark magical power emanated from the woman as a thin barrier went to cover the entirety of the room. "My lady demands complete secrecy, so I thank you for entertaining me." I calmly looked at the thin barrier that seemed to prevent any sounds coming out from the room and looked towards this person and said, "All right, be straightforward and tell me what you're talking about. You can call me Knight. My lady wanted to meet you for a discussion whenever you were available, preferably sooner rather than later. Her status is a bit complicated, and she is committed to doing everything in secrecy." The woman calling herself Knight pulled out a golden plaque that had Snowy Peak written on it, stretching it out towards me. "Please visit Snowy Peak's famous white courtyard whenever you can. We promise not to waste too much of your time." As soon as I received the plaque and looked piercingly at the woman in front of me, her figure began blending into the night. She gave another quick bow towards me before she completely disappeared, and the thin barrier around the room also faded away. I looked at the golden plaque in my hands as my mind began to churn. There were a few things to note from this meeting. First, this person that I had somehow gained the interest of is very powerful, so powerful that someone as experienced as that dark-clothed woman followed her commands. Every time the woman called Knight spoke, she referred to that lady with the highest respect. This made me question if it was someone in an extremely high position, or someone with a rank higher than S, or both. The fact they lived on one of the kingdom's 4 floating peaks meant she could be a noble or someone with immense wealth. The second thing to note was the goodwill they were sending my way. That very important person wanted a meeting, but she sent someone to relay her wishes and allowed me to choose when I would go to this meeting or whether I would even go at all. This was the most perplexing of things. Why was this person offering me such respect too? She obviously has enough power to compel a powerful rankus. So what made me stand out in her eyes that I received such treatment? I continued to mull over the entire interaction, even using recorder to go back and watch the scene that just played out multiple times to see if I missed anything. I couldn't glean anything else from it, just the fact that even though I had garnered the attention of someone powerful, with the way they were acting it shouldn't be malicious in any way. I still had to be careful though, so I would advance my plans a bit and take a risk tomorrow. I would increase my power by farming the Sky Peak nest before I do anything else. The night that should have been a relaxing one became restless as my rapidly moving thoughts pushed the sleep I wanted further and further away. Early in the morning, I went out of the inn and into the bustling streets of the fascinating kingdom as I made my way towards the huge fortress wall that led outside. A thinner layer of snow covered the ground today, with clear blue skies hanging overhead. The large metal gates of one of the entrances of the walled fortress was halfway opened as carriages and people moved in and out, with mercenary parties being seen moving about here and there. Besides the nests that beasts congregated in, there were dungeons that were naturally formed and maintained from this world's essence that many adventurers and parties ventured in. These dungeons differed in ranks, with the highest ones near this kingdom being epic rank. A lot of this knowledge came from the time I spent in the library. These dungeons spread out all over the world were different from the dangerous ones I had been normally used to, and they seemed like this world's way to raise the strength of its inhabitants. The system in my world had gone a completely different direction and created a system of power that more easily extracted essence and made its inhabitants rapidly grow in strength from dungeons created by invading forces. After these dungeons were taken care of in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if I find properly created dungeons meant only to raise the strength of hunters. A dungeon break would not occur with these types of dungeons as they were most likely properly maintained with this world's core, with more essence being placed into them to replenish the origins of the beings in it. From the information I read, the higher ranking the dungeon was, the more massive it would be. Some adventure parties found themselves spending a few days inside to completely clear an epic ranked dungeon. These dungeons would be another way for me to speedily increase my power, but I would start with the nests where many beasts congregated first. There were many leaders for me to take down and gain skills, and I should be safe as long as I do not go too far in. These extremely massive dungeons would be my next step after I collect more information. I passed by the busy doors of the large fortress and made my way around the throngs of mostly humans and a few demi-humans, activating all of my concealing skills before I used flight. Once I strayed far enough, I flew through the skies, heading towards the huge landmass that beasts congregated in. This time I would be going all out and targeting as many rank S beasts as I could. The goal was to get at least a few defensive rank S skills that would bring me more confidence if I ever came across a deadly situation of facing something of higher rank. The new rank S skill was quickly learned, along with a few rank A skills that were not worthy of mentioning currently that would be used for skill combination once their proficiency rises. I looked in the messy attribute panel at the skills that continued to show their effectiveness that I regularly used. Skills: B Eagle Eyes 100, B plus Dark Assassin 100, 8 Flights 100, A Instant Transfer 98, A Infernal Purge 100, A Ultra Regeneration 94, A Spear of Destiny 95, A Pain Resistance 100, Aid Recorder 43, A Combusting Spears 69. A Language Comprehension 42, A Earth Armor 77, Obscure 78, A plus Arctic Zone 53, S Volcanic Eruption 79, S Summon Virulent Abomination 89, S Rage of the Thunder Monarch 77, S All Element Resistance 5, S Protection of the Wounded 2. The rank S skills were rising slowly, with some more than halfway through to max proficiency. On the messy side of the many lower-ranked skills on the panel, some B+ defense and support skills were nearing 100. I should be able to gain some new rank A skills from skill combination by the end of the day. I moved my eyes expectantly from the panel to the cold and snowy surroundings around me as the virulent abomination finished off any beasts that neared. We were only on the outer ring of this large floating landmass, but we neared the distance when the one leading the previous extermination task force had us stop. I didn't want to go too far into come in contact with an epic-ranked beast so fast, so I would proceed with caution and see if I can get another rank S skill before calling it a day and preparing for that possibly impactful rendezvous in the magnificently floating snowy peak of the Frozen Kingdom. We slowly moved further in, making sure to proceed carefully. I spread my attention through the barely visible trees around us while using eagle eyes to check for the incoming beasts. My attention was fully on reconnaissance as the virulent abomination took the brunt of the fight, our progress becoming slower as we moved in. Powerful beasts were present the deeper we went, and we soon came across 3 rank S leaders commanding a large group of beasts towards us. I looked excitedly towards these ugly-looking monsters as they already seemed like the perfect loot in my eyes. We waited for the large groups of beasts to come to us and moved back as we fought, putting a safe distance for the fight not to take place any closer inland. The virulent abomination clashed with the groups led by the 2 rank S bosses, its body quickly becoming shredded when 2 of the leaders attacked it in conjunction. The other leader was making its way towards me, its large body moving at fast speeds and evading the cold blasts of Arctic zone as it neared. The beasts that were ravaging the summon thought they had won as they tore through its wings and tough muscles, but were dismayed soon after when the abomination exploded in front of them. Boom. The impact took out many of the normal surrounding beasts and heavily wounded the 2 leaders that were ganging up on it. Not a moment after, a large malachite rune bore out a completely brand new abomination that jumped back into the fight. The leader targeting me was finally caught by one of the Arctic zone. As its attention was pulled away, its figure slowing down and allowing me to cast even more of the skill where it stood. Its body let out uncomfortable sounds as the destructive cold elements that appeared tried to break down its defenses unsuccessfully. Rage of the Thunder Monarch and volcanic eruption would be its only respite as its large figure took multiple strikes of the roiling purple lightning and molten flames, letting out screeching howls before it fell to the continued casts of the skills. I continued to keep looking out to our surroundings as I neared the body of the dead rank S boss and received a golden skill book and cores. The 3rd rank S skill addition of the day would be Saint's Phantom. A mirage of a saint from long ago appears for 10 seconds, using its powerful magic to heal all wounds and dispel any major negative effects. I learned the skill right away and looked ahead to the summon that had ripped apart one of the beasts it was facing and was now clashing with the final one. At this point in time, though, I saw a drastic change to the area ahead of us that I had been continuously watching with eagle eyes. A powerful figure was rushing towards us like a speeding bullet train, its body ignoring the extremely sturdy trees shooting up to the skies as it knocked onto them and blasted through in a straight line. Damn. I quickly used instant transfer to the body of one of the dead leaders and obtained another skill book and cores, before I turned my head at full speed and used eagle eyes, with instant transfer, again to appear more than a mile away from the location. Boom. I heard the impact the moment I disappeared as the large beast that was coming towards us smashed onto the virulent abomination and wrecked the summon through the trees around it. I only briefly watched as glistening white claws shredded into the chest of my summon before it exploded into the blast of flesh and bones that slightly pushed the figure back. The beast showed slight injuries as some its fur became tinted green, but they soon turned spotlessly white as its piercing eyes found my figure more than a mile away. Another virulent abomination appeared in my location as I used instant transfer to appear at a distance another mile away, sending the summon to hold back the beast. FUCK that. I used instant transfer multiple times until I neared the periphery of the nest again, not looking behind as I continued flashing away. When I was more than a few miles away and could see the floating landmass in the distance, a resounding roar of anger that could be heard from here broke out. I steadied my breathing as I continued to fly away from the nest, remembering the information I read that powerful beasts did not rush out of the nest they were in unless a truly powerful one had united many of the beasts congregated together to attack the lands surrounding them. This hadn't occurred for the past years in this area as the number of beasts was regularly reduced, with powerful adventurers and mercenaries forming parties to take down leaders that rose past rank S every few years. The roars of the angered beasts continued, and became distant as I continued to fly away. My heart was beating at a fast pace as I thought about the epic ranked beast that I almost clashed with. Not yet. Not yet. I had to play it safe until the skills I collected rose in proficiency and I stood no chance of losing my life while fighting against such a beast. My life was too important for me to play around without having full confidence. Once the proficiency of the rank S skills rose, I would be back to take down this powerful beast. It was highly dangerous, but would also be extremely profitable. Other people could not gain power exceeding rank S just by defeating an epic ranked boss. But I could, and I was looking forward to it. I moved away from the floating sky peak nest and flew back towards the large fortress walls in the distance. I took out the skill book that I managed to grab before the appearance of the powerful epic ranked beast. It was Null's profane eruption affect the bodies of slain enemies to violently burst, releasing poisonous blight in an area of 5 meters. I recalled the multitude of dead bodies that piled up whenever I fought and looked forward to using this the next time. The cold winds in the skies as well as the voluminous snow that always fell in the frozen kingdom became comforting and cooled the tension I felt in my body. I flew down once I neared the fortress wall, with the crowds that came in and out thinning as night neared. With the increasing fear and tension of demons plaguing the lands, most of the merchants that made their business traveling between kingdoms and selling their goods had to put their lives on the line. The roles of adventurers and mercenaries further increased to protect merchants and key figures that travel around. They had to have someone powerful in case they came across a squadron of demons moving across the lands. I passed the heavily protected gates with no issue and found myself back in the beautiful entrance town that seemed to be coming to life with the advent of the night sky. I recalled the invitation I had received as well as the golden plaque I held in my storage ring. This person that had taken an interest in me and called for a meeting out of the blue might be an extremely important step during my time in the Frozen Kingdom, and I couldn't take it lightly. I had added 4 more rank S skills in my arsenal and felt all the more safer, but I still had to move with caution. I would take this risk with the meeting now and see what results come from it. I found myself moving past the rows of businesses that began their work as well as the barely dressed women that seemed to literally be materializing from the dark corners of inns. My destination this time was the long bridge that snaked all the way up to the floating snowy peak high up in the distance. 2 guards still stood side by side and carefully inspected everyone going up, only letting known people with a high status pass through without checking. I took out the golden plaque I received from the woman that called herself Knight as I made my way to the bridge. The guards on either sides looked at me briefly before their gazes went away. The first step I took on the bridge felt like a starting point for something entirely new. Ever created with the blue glowing gems that line the opposite sides and its extreme width. It stood in the sky with very little movement as I climbed up. I had counted the bridge was built with complex artistry and looked like the most expensive stairs ever created with the blue glowing gems that line the opposite sides and its extreme width. It stood in the sky with very little movement as I climbed up. I had counted more than 300 steps before I came across 2 extravagantly dressed women making their way down that gave me curious looks. Another few minutes passed as I stopped enjoying the scenes high in the air while looking down at the twinkling lights below, and I ascended the entire bridge into a brand new region that seemed entirely different than what I've been seeing. There were normal-sized trees with white leaves lined up from the bridge and heading into the snowy peak. The smooth road paved beautifully as this place seemed twice as exquisite as the land below us. The path forked as I went further in, and the end of the path held a figure of someone that seemed larger than 3 meters. The figure had a wild aura that definitely exceeded rank S as they stood guard on the path right off the bridge entering Snowy Peak. The being had their body encased in a similar white armor that I had seen many of the guards wear, with only their head remaining uncovered. It was the head that surprised me, as it glowed with a fiery light and had a full mane all around it. The figure had the striking head that closely matched that of the fiercest lion. This was a powerful beastfolk that was not to be trifled with. I calmed my beating heart after meeting this guard that was most likely of epic rank as I considered what path to choose. They had given me the message to come to a place called the White Courtyard, but I had no idea where that was. I was planning on speaking to the guard when a dark-clothed figure flashed into being on the right path. It looked to be the same one that I had met yesterday as they bowed towards me and indicated for me to follow them. Grand buildings came to light as we walked further in, and I started seeing throngs of people carrying themselves with a level of arrogance walk in and out of luxurious-looking stores and restaurants. The dark-clothed woman I was following took us behind a certain building and knocked on it rapidly, causing a release mechanism as a hidden door appeared on the ground leading to a dimly lit pathway. I jumped in with her as she spoke for the first time today. The lady wanted to take even more extreme measures to stop any outside intervention or peering eyes. We will arrive at the white courtyard shortly. I nodded at her words as we followed the hidden path snaking its way underground, eventually following it up to a small courtyard. We unearthed ourselves into an all-white room that gave out a calming feeling as the hidden door closed behind us. Night led the way through a few more doors, and I soon found myself face to face with a veiled figure similar to someone I had seen not too long ago. I tried not to show the shock on my face as it dawned on me that the figure I took the interest of wore the same cloth veil of a high-profile person that even the powerful Rankus captain just wanted to be in the presence of. Night quickly bowed and receded from the room, closing the door with a click as multiple magical barriers began enclosing the room we were in. The veiled figure stood up and took a small curtsy while lifting up her dress and pushing her head down a little. The dark veil that covered her in entirety disappeared right after as the most stunning face I had ever seen revealed itself to my eyes. The face had a detached and cold expression with dark eyes that piercingly shone in the night. A bountiful head full of dazzling blue hair came into light as the figure fully revealed itself to me. A clearly expectant voice that seemed to betray the icy expression rang out. "Esteemed sir, thank you for taking the time to meet me." Every word that came out of the white lips of this person seemed to be dripping with elegance as I shook myself out of my reverie and calmly spoke. "It's no problem. If I can be forward, who do I have the pleasure of meeting today?" The figure rose their cold face up high as the clear voice that I can definitely confirm showed more excitement compared to the frozen face rang out. "I am the second child of King Rourke Belmont of the Frozen Kingdom, the ice princess that holds control of the snowy peak we stand on. My name is Adelaide Belmont, and it is my deepest pleasure to welcome you here." I was trying to control my emotions to the best of my abilities as I met with the person I had longed to meet. My unique skill continued to show his body shining with a golden light to such an extent that the murky gray light that surrounded me started to recede. This was the person that would prevent my death and the incoming calamity. I had to find a way to gain his favor, no matter what. My mind that was always scheming was drawing a blank when it came to this person, as I really knew very little about him and had no information to work with. He had appeared randomly not too long ago, showing an average power of rank S with an ability that granted him slightly more mana than average. The only time the calm expression left his face was when he ate, where it seemed he was enjoying the food so much that a smile always bloomed. From the mercenaries that were with him, I found this esteemed person's name to be Noah Osmont. All of these were things I found out in a matter of a day after using the full force of my information agency to follow the movements of this person since the day he appeared. But I still had nothing to work with, making me very frustrated. The nobles that stood against me were met with swift destruction because of the many secrets I was able to dip my hands into, but I had nothing to build on for the current person. My mind cleared as I chose the most simplest approach for now: honesty. I squinted at the face that continued to shine blindingly as I spoke. "I am the second child of King Rourke Belmont of the Frozen Kingdom, the ice princess that holds control of the snowy peak we stand on. My name is Adelaide Belmont, and it is my deepest pleasure to welcome you here." Honesty. This was something that many people overlooked, but could always be trusted when used properly. I continued, trying to keep my voice as stable as possible. "Sir Osmont, I only have the purest of intentions for calling you here, but I do not know how to proceed given the subject of the matter. How do I tell someone that I just met about a huge calamity approaching us, and that he would be the one to save me from my untimely death without sounding just a tad bit crazy? How can I build trust with this person without seeming too eager or with a hostile motive? I would see if blatant honesty with no sophistry would do the trick." His gaze that motioned for me to continue felt like a tremendous weight pressing down. "I have a peculiar unique skill that tells me who I should associate with and who I shouldn't. You are the first person I met that the skill is calling for the strongest association with." There was silence in the air as the words left my mouth. I had exposed a secret about my unique skill that nobody else knew. My mother died with this secret, as even her husband was left in the dark. But I took this risk because I had full trust in Golden Rule that continued to give the same message even now: stick to this person as much as possible. Now, how would you respond to a vulnerable girl exposing her secret to you? The dazzling woman, Princess Adelaide, continued to surprise me with every sentence she spoke. When I heard her last words, I had to take a few seconds and replay them with recorder to see if I heard correctly. This was the princess of the Frozen Kingdom, someone who controlled one of the peaks and the favored daughter of the current king. From her words, associating with me will be something extremely beneficial to her? I quickly thought about my own position and the goals I had when I descended into this world. I was someone unique, with nearly unlimited power. I planned to quickly raise my power and influence and disrupt the invasion of demons in this world, ultimately taking it for myself. The things she was saying about a unique skill that informed her of which people to surround herself with did not seem that far-fetched. So let's say she really is telling the truth. My heart increased its beatings as I was fully realizing the new possibilities if the words of this person were true. I had planned to rise to the top of this kingdom in strength and take the lead of creating huge achievements while fighting the demonic forces that would surely come, only making grand moves after that. But with this person, I could see another, much accelerated path forming. I looked at the blue-haired woman who still had the same cold expression and said, "You really believe that someone of my level of strength will have an impact on someone of your standing?" "Yes. I wholly believe in my unique skill. It has never once been wrong. With that being said, I would love to work closely with you for the future. Whatever you need, let me know. I will provide you all the power I hold. While providing you with the most critical of information, I listened to words that seemed too good to be true. The princess of this kingdom would give me her full support in whatever I wanted to do because her skill told her so? Very well. This is an opportunity too big to pass up. I would use it to potentially take over this land in a much shorter time span than I thought possible. A possible period of a year or more could possibly be cut down to months. Alright, I'll play. As a measure of goodwill to start off our relationship, I will share the biggest secret about the intrusion of demon kings that are currently building their forces in the center of the continent. This is a secret that only the royalty of the remaining kingdoms have access to, and something that would definitely be of benefit to you. With a wave of hand, an exquisite table appeared between us with 2 seats on opposite sides. Sparkling trays of food began to appear one after another as one of the golden rings on her slender fingers continued to shine. The table was soon filled to the brim with the most ethereal food I had ever come across as she motioned for me to sit. Let me take some of your time to describe the huge secret of the conspiracy that brought down the most powerful kingdom of this world into the hands of demons.